All right, you guys, on this episode of the Outrun Show, we are swooping into the topics of revisiting our spirit animals from the prior episodes prior, Christmas past, and as well as talking about some. Did we have locker talk? No.
Well, I think
it's in there.
Design. Well, we're talking about our new studio that's coming in, the new build. So we've got a brand new studio that we want to make like the awesome and most productive work and creative space in our new gym. So it's going to be super cool. And then we dig into the idea of style. Is style the most sustainable way to train? What is it? How do you bring it to your practice? And how do you become the most stylistic version of yourself? All that and more on this episode of the Outrun Show. I did go to the... Oh, that reminds me. Let's have a conversation.
Did he just get reminded in the middle of a reminder?
In the middle of a reminder.
He's like, oh, that reminds me. This was happening. Oh, that reminds me. Okay.
Inception.
So we're two trees removed from two tangents off.
He went to Bindle's,
right.
They're like HQ almost now.
The roastery?
Yeah.
It was cool. And they had the second floor.
Yeah.
Was pretty sick, and I was like, oh, this reminds me of a shared workspace. And then I was like, when we have our meeting about what the Castle Black is gonna look like,
in terms of like furniture and layout.
Yeah. I wanted to borrow from some of the.
I just feel like just bleep out the like
just
bleep out the curse words, but this has to stay. This has to go in the episode. You realize that, right?
Oh my gosh,
dude, did you sleep all right last night?
Yeah, I slept great. I just had like so many ideas.
Dude, take a couple of big drinks there.
I should have less of this.
Wow.
No, I want to have a meeting to talk about the design of the studio in the new build, and I got a bunch of ideas because I looked at Bindle's upstairs, and then I started thinking about all the shared workspaces I've been to, and I was like, oh yeah, I totally don't want this place to feel like a sterile office that I spent years trying to escape, and just all these cool ideas flooded into my head from the Bay Area shared workspaces I've been to, all the WeWorks and all that stuff, and I'm like, dang, we could make this like the sickest looking like co-working-esque space.
True, yeah.
Possible.
That's a good vision for it.
Right. Woo, that was tough to get out.
You got there though.
I got there.
All from Bindle.
All from Bindle.
But
I think co-working is a good goal for that upstairs area. Like, that's what I imagine is like being up there and working with at least you three. But it'd be cool to have the media guys up there too, and anyone working on projects in the gym.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get kind of efficient with that layout.
Yeah,
because we'll want it to be functional, but also aesthetically pleasing.
It's gotta
right?
be.
As all things should be functional and aesthetic.
Path as Travis, because I want like a big conference table. I'm like that, but
I think a big conference table is like is fine for me.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's the most aesthetically pleasing. Like, it's definitely the simplest, because you just buy a $1,500 conference table with like plugins on the sides, and then everybody just props their laptop up, and then you're good, right? It's the most economical, but it's not very good looking.
I'm just thinking like some like big old table that's basically like a parkour piece, and we just work at it.
I mean, we just gotta see, because like you say stuff like that, and it's like, my wife hates minivans, but like she's thinking about the minivan from her childhood.
What?
And minivans now, hates minivans. Like, she's like, whatever we do, we can't have a minivan.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's why crossovers are so popular now anyway. It's just because minivans are, everybody's thinking like the Fresh Off the Boat TV series minivan, right? Like that Astro with like, everybody's like, oh,
it's literally like a bean with wheels.
Yes.
Although I take that new Volkswagen, the electric Volkswagen,
right?
And you stay. Right?
I'm just saying, like, I don't have that
that's
version.
What you're saying, though.
I think brand like the current market minivans are basically floating like hotels. Like, they're so sick. They're almost like what RVs used to be, right? Like my sister has a Honda, and like that thing will do everything: bucket seats, flips, like it's just all this cool stuff on the inside. And I had a different experience with that because my dad was a video and film producer for ad agencies. So when the minivan showed up that we worked in, it was like the minivan from like the movie like Twisters or something. Like you got in and there's just all kind of radios and buttons and technology. It was like the A-Team. Like that was my minivan. It was like the A-Team.
Whoa. Can you summon a fighter jet in here?
It was so cool. So to me, it was not, touring around town, going to different, it wasn't that kind of
the carpool minivan.
Yeah.
Those ones are rough.
So thumbs up or thumbs down for minivans, guys?
Oh, I always want passenger van is I feel like more what you're talking about, and that's what I always wanted for the gym. And like bench seats on the side. And,
yeah, didn't I? I think I tried to convince you guys to buy one just like 2 months ago.
Like a bench seat on one side, gaming monitors on the other side.
As long as it's painted like the A-Team and just like.
And then monkey bars on the
roof.
With
like Mr. T.
Yeah, this
and a giant spoiler on the back.
Road violations there on what you can mount inside your car.
Which you can now do inside of a passenger van.
Well, you'd basically be like just another room that's parked and can move if you needed to move.
Yeah. Down. Yeah. Could be cool.
And with glass garage doors, it just makes so much sense to always have like some sort of cool vehicle
parked right up front. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like an event van.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yep.
We'd have to do some more events once everybody gets all vaccinated and stuff, but
and there's places to go.
That's true. There's nowhere to go right now. Just here.
Yep.
Staying home.
Truth.
But that's all right.
Are we gonna?
We're getting there.
Are we gonna revisit? I want to revisit our spirit animals, our Parkour spirit animals, to see if they've changed.
Because you want to try and lobby for a different one, or what?
No,
because you're gonna have to lobby off screen for a different one.
Okay, so background, we had a episode. Was it like our first? It was like one of the first 5 episodes of the podcast.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was early on because it was in my house.
Really?
Yeah, summer camps were going on.
Oh, okay.
So I don't quite remember Justin's.
I don't remember anyone except
what was yours?
Oh, yeah.
Mine was a mountain goat.
His was
an
cat.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's right. Justin was a cat. Travis was a chicken.
No. It was a crow.
Well, no, crow was the modified one. We
started with
chicken. We went with chicken. Chicken was the first one, and then we were like, okay, you're definitely smarter than a chicken, so we'll give you a crow because crows are super smart. Super smart. Annoyingly smart, in fact.
Yeah, they are.
So.
Yeah, crows and ravens are pretty cool. I had to.
So you're trying to lobby for a different one?
No, I'm trying to lobby for Raven.
For Raven.
Raven's also got that holographic, right? The feathers.
Are ravens and crows? Aren't they like pretty much the same?
They're
different.
Yeah,
they are.
They're a little bit different. Yeah, the ravens.
Done me a learn.
They are. Same idea. So I'm just thinking,
what's the main difference? Can you look that up?
Well, the beaks are different. Their call is different, and they have a So like a crow is. I'm gonna have to do a bird impression.
Yeah, just look it up.
The crow.
I want the scientific main difference.
Bigger, older, smarter.
Hey, you're not the bird
for
guy.
Ravens.
Okay?
For ravens,
he's got a phone.
He's
a bird
up,
guy.
Sir. You
I already
did the research.
Ravens, like crows, 11, 12 years. Ravens up to 30.
What?
Yeah.
Oh dang.
That's impressive.
Ravens are a little bit bigger. They technically are smarter. They're less like.
What does technically smarter mean? Like they're better at math, but not as.
Yeah, I mean maybe they live longer, so they can acquire more knowledge, but their memory is stronger. Their memory is stronger, and their relationships are different. So there's that.
So do you want the raven over the crow over the chicken, because they're just. I mean, the chicken, I totally agree with you. I'm wanting to lobby for something other than a chicken, because I would too. But do you want the raven over the crow just, for the aesthetic reasons? Because you think ravens...
Yeah, I think...
They're cooler?
Well, I think
they are.
I actually... I think that... I totally get what you guys were saying. You guys were going for chicken. Well, first, I look like a bird in so many ways. So, I'm willing to own that. Right? Let's start there. Like, the nose, the profile, and this. And then, Colin, you can just freeze in a bird graphic that's like, give me a nice, crow or something. Anyway, the arm length, there's a lot of bird stuff going on. And you guys, I didn't even get the... I didn't get birdie. I didn't even get the thing when you guys started calling all the personalities. So like Justin's like, yeah, it's because like you're always like on the outside like squawking in.
He's squawking in.
I'm squawking in.
So true, dude.
And I'm just like,
He's like, hey, what are you doing?
hey, love snacks. Like love snacks. But then a lot of heckling. So I was like, okay, I get it. Fine. Because I wanted something glorious and glamorous. Like not an eagle, because I think the eagle's been over like hyped in America. Like I think this is really just this like, you know, sort of like trash bird. For, you know, I mean, they're scavengers, right? They're like, and they're pretty birds and they're cool, but it's, you know, we've made it this gallant thing when like, what did Benjamin Franklin want? A turkey? Because he thought that stuff was really cool. Yeah.
Well, it's just because turkeys are like the only bird that's like native to North America.
Yeah, they're indigenous, right? And so he's trying to be like authentic, right?
Yeah, which is definitely like, you know, realistic.
And I thought eagles are pretty cool, but they're really like kind of quiet and solitary. They really are. I'm just not
You're
quiet.
not that.
And I'm not super
You're not
solitary.
No.
But so I just figured like, you know, crow on a bad day, raven on a good day, right? Like the crows are like heckle more, they hang out more in groups. The ravens a little more solitary, older, have some wisdom, you know, if you get a little bit of that.
Do you think ravens live longer because like biologically they're just
Colin, which
better wired, or because they just make smarter decisions?
Like, is it just like crows are just, they're just in too
like
much
crows
drama?
Yeah, they're just like, they're always starting something.
They're always
right?
trying to do like the height drop off the
They're
roof of the gym.
always around talking shit.
Mm-hmm.
Crows always talking
And
shit.
then they just get clapped.
Yeah. And then
And
some
that's why
eats them.
they make it to 12. Because they're just doing too many parkour shenanigans.
Yeah, they're doing high drops,
Mm-hmm.
talking beef.
Eating whatever. They're at Taco Bell, Baja Blast.
We love you, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but there's that characteristic aspects that I can relate to more. It's just, yeah, it took me a while to warm up to the aesthetic of a bird of that kind, right? A crow or a raven. But now I'm like, yeah, no, I do see it. And it can't be like, so I think when you have like an animal persona, it just can't be too cool. It can't be too try hard. I don't like that. Like, and so like, yeah, you know.
I learned that with the Chinese New Year, and I was like a rat or something. I was like, well.
91?
Yeah, I forgot what I was. It wasn't anything cool. There was like only one
91.
cool animal
Is
in the
91.
Chinese New Year's, and it's like the dragon. It's year 2000.
Oh, you have
Yeah.
dragon, you have tiger. Yeah, goat could be cool for our purposes.
Could get dog.
I have dog. Yeah,
Ah.
I'm your dog. Which could be a wolf, which could be, you know, so you get some like.
I don't know. What is the Mandarin word for it? Because the thing is, everywhere I've
Yeah,
seen
so
it
the
says
Mandarin
dog.
word
Doesn't
for,
say canine.
you would say shugo, so it is dog, and then wolf is a pervert. So if you're a color wolf in Chinese is a derogatory term for like somebody who's sort of like, you know, just like they are kind of, you know,
Predatory.
crass and sexually explicit sometimes. You would call you a color wolf. Salam. And so I'm like, man, color wolf sounds cool, but
Yep.
you guess you're a little pervy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, don't want to be that.
Yeah, it's just
Wow,
like somebody
okay.
maybe makes crass jokes or something like that. It's not really like a predator or that much of a threat, but yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. I've never been called it, so.
Thank God.
Anyway, but yeah,
We digress.
we digress.
But where I was going though with the like, do the ravens live longer because they just make smarter decisions? Is we had the topic come up about like what's the most sustainable way to train parkour, considering that all three of us have been in it longer than the majority of parkour athletes, right? I would be confident in saying that 9 out of 10 people I meet doing parkour have done it longer than they have.
Yeah, I think you have. If we're using a broad spectrum to bring in athlete, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the people we trained with earlier on, they are OGs still hanging in there. A lot of them still hanging in there.
Yeah. I would use the word train and not do.
Okay,
Parkour, right?
alright.
Like you have to be actively practicing. Like if I wouldn't count it, not that everybody counts their own thing, but I wouldn't count it if you're just like, oh yeah, occasionally like once a month I go out and I jump on some stuff. Like that's not really training. So maybe you can call yourself a community member of parkour, but not really like a parkour athlete currently.
Yeah, if you're an athlete, it's more than a hobby. With once a month, it's like a hobby. I feel like.
You're a hobby parkour, which is totally cool. We love that. Or you're an parkour athlete.
Yeah, I think I don't know many people who so casually train parkour that they fit in that like super hobbyist. Every once in a while you run into somebody who's like, I had a phase in high school, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh yeah, I used to train and then now I want to get back into it. And they were out at a few, did it a little bit or something.
Yeah, how about this definition then? Longest consecutive training of parkour with no breaks.
Yeah, that's how
we're going on 15, 16? How many years? It's going close to 16 because it started when I was 12, right? 6th grade is when I started. So yeah, so it's going on 16 years now, and I've never had a break of like training parkour. Like I always did other things, like I was skateboarding through middle school and high school, alongside doing parkour. So I'd skate to the parkour spot, do some skating, do some parkour, but I never took a break from parkour. So it's always been parkour as my like main thing.
But typically, I don't think you advertise that.
No. I'm just saying, like,
So it's hard to.
Like,
but let's
could I count it if I had started at 12 and then stopped at 16 and then picked it back up at 24?
Oh yeah, that's
like that. I wouldn't say that I've been doing parkour for 16 years at that point. I'd be like, well, I've been doing parkour again for 5.
Right. I have that with language. Like when people ask me, oh, how long have you been studying Chinese? I'm like, oh, I went to school for a couple years in high school, then used it casually, and then whatever, picked up a couple lessons here. I don't tell people I have 15 years of language experience.
Yeah.
That doesn't make
feels a bit disingenuous.
Sense. It's disingenuous, I think. So same thing to downplay your exposure to. Like I feel like some people they be training really hard and they're like, no, I do just like, once a month or something. Like I feel like there's people like under leveraging their experience as well sometimes. But okay, let's use that definition. Continuous training. You had to have been. It has to be on your mind. You have to be trying stuff or training. Once a week or minimum or something like that, pretty continuously.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so would you guys say that there's anything, because are you stopping parkour?
No, my parkour training has only become, like, I feel like,
More?
I feel like the last 5 years of my life has maybe been a little bit of parkour denial even, where like I'm training more of it or doing more of it than I'm actually like,
owning.
Yeah, not like an imposter syndrome, but I just came with such a broad background of other stuff that it just has taken a while for the volume to accumulate for me to be like, okay, cumulative parkour time stacks up against some of the other stuff I've done. You just hold that contrast in your mind and you're like, well, this is what I spent my time on, but really, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So then would you have like any, I guess not advice isn't a word, but what do you think was, because you haven't had any major injuries that were like, oh, this made me stop parkour because I've completely broken myself, right? Which is a major reason why some people stop doing parkour is because they have an injury, right? That's sad.
That's the quickening. My only thing was that concussion back in like 2016. But yeah, I think that was more of a nervous breakdown and cumulative stress from overload in just life trying to get stuff done. But no, even then, parkour was like one of the first things I went back to. Strength training was first because I just needed to be able to get a baseline. But then it was right back to parkour. And I remember crying the first time that I trained. Like I did a full session and it had been like a good amount of time. I just couldn't control my emotions. And then I was like, oh.
Were you just like doing strides and just like...
It was some height stuff and some cats and some stuff over here that was like enough that you're like, okay, I'm not just hopping over a ball box now. Like I'm actually doing something that puts you in that place of mental flow state, like and
you're back at your baseline. Or
like you're freaking doing it, right? You're hitting something you're a little afraid of, and you're doing some strides, and if it was parkour at a level that I had been used to training, and then so that means something emotionally, I feel like, and it wasn't something I had a choice over either. So love is blind.
What about you?
Yeah. What are we asking? What's the question?
Is there anything that you avoided, or rather did more of intentionally, so that to continue this, right? Because I feel like your first 5 years or so of parkour, not you in specific, just in general in parkour, is all about like just consuming parkour, right? Yep. You should eat everything that's placed in front of you, And then after year 5, you start to be a little more selective about what it is, either because of preference or because of maturity, right? Maybe a little bit of both. Like, oh, I'm not into that. I'm more into this, or I'm not doing that because I want to keep doing it, right? And I think that also depends on whether you start at, 12 and then you're 17 at 5 years, or you start at 8, right? And you're much younger when you get there. So some of that is like just a mental thing. But so is there anything that you like intentionally avoided or intentionally pursued?
Yeah, it's definitely avoided, and it's avoiding maximum effort for extended periods of time.
That's true. You've mentioned that before.
Yeah, there's just you see it when you see pro athletes doing their maximum effort. They come with, that clip where they make it comes with like 5 other clips where they didn't make it, and you just only get a few of those. I feel like before one of them takes you out or does some chronic or gives you an injury that has chronic lasting side effects on there. So that and I've definitely done maximum effort on camera, and I've been captured doing maximum effort on camera, and the frustration that it has is pretty stressful too. Like the pressure to perform your absolute best on camera and in front of other people is pretty high, and it pushes you to do things that you don't quite have, and it can teach you things too. But I just feel like there's a small window where you either learn the lesson or you complete your goal. But and basically that was like 3 attempts for me. I think that was around 2019. I started giving myself that limit. If I'm trying something at 100% effort, you get 3 full bails, where I basically just hit whatever I'm hitting in all the wrong ways. I give myself 3 attempts, and if I don't get it, I need to come back with it later or find a progression that gets me halfway there.
That's kind of funny because I also have a similar rule. It's more specific to like filming the clip, and not like if somebody's filming, I'm like, film me 3 times. If I don't get it in 3 times, we'll come back to it. Mostly it's like to avoid them feeling like they're spending their whole training session filming me. But also it's a little bit of that. It's just like, if I can't get it to a point that I feel satisfied about it in 3 attempts, then it's either I'm overreaching too far, or I'm a pretentious, picky little bastard. I just need to lower my standards and be okay with how I look, right?
Honesty.
Either way, it's like, it's 3 attempts, it's fine. Because you do all your practice times, you get 3 filmed attempts, right? So that's kind of funny that we both kind of stumbled on that. I'm sure we came up with that idea, as we share a lot of our training philosophies, but
there's genetics.
Yeah. Yes. What did you say?
Sorry, I interrupted you.
I think I lost it. But yeah, it's worked out for me pretty well. I definitely don't have. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. There's a certain definitely pride in looking back on the things that I've done only once or twice. So that like Kong gainers and other moves at super high risk. I look back and I can't believe I did them. But it's not like I was the best self back then. I was just the riskiest self, and somehow I survived those risks. I remember doing like a double Kong over glass panes and then Kong preeing like a brick wall, and during my tour, and I look back at that clip and I was like, what on earth was I thinking doing that? I've never done a double Kong pre before, necessarily over glass handrails, and so like I feel proud about those moments, but I do feel more proud about the tricks that I can still pull right now as a 29-year-old casually. Those tricks I'm more proud about, because at any moment I can whip out, a butterfly twist or some really easy tricking combo, and I feel like they're just as impressive as that trick, because the only people who are impressed by those really big tricks are other parkour athletes. Yeah. So like, if I'm just thinking about what I feel happy about doing right now, it's all the stuff that only takes like 60% effort. They're really easy for me, and they look really good. I can spend a lot of time doing them, and
they're fun.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
They just like, when I do it, there isn't like a rush of like, oh my gosh, I survived. It's like, oh, I did that really well, and it barely took the breath out of me. Right?
I feel like your training should never feel like that. You should never finish a training session and be like, I lived.
I lived. But that,
that's some hardcore survivor bias, literally.
People get addicted to that, for sure.
They do.
Yeah. And I felt it. And it is very strong, but I'm not gonna keep doing that. Right now I look at it, I'm like, no, dude, I would have done that 22. No, not anymore.
Yeah, I definitely feel like There are some things that I'm not as good at as I used to be, but I definitely feel like I'm better as a whole athlete now than I used to be then. One, because the swath of things that I've like experienced to bring back to parkour is wider, but also because I feel like I've have a different look on certain skills, like certain skills that I'm like, oh, I really want to learn that, I really want to try that. That's too risky. Some of them I'm like, nope, that would be cool, but I'm not gonna risk it, right? And other times I'm like, no, I'm gonna go for that one because I'm confident enough that like I'm well-rounded enough that I can hit that. Whereas before it was like I just gotta hit this because this is the next step for me, right? I didn't have a wide enough field of view to be like, oh, I could just go over here. It was like that's just the next thing. I'm pointing at the viewers now. Mm-hmm. It's like that's just the next thing for me, so I have to go for it. Mm-hmm. Right? Whereas now I'm like, well, I could go over here for a little bit and kind of sneak around it or come back to it or something like that. And that I think is pretty cool. That makes me happy to be able to like come back to things and be like, oh yeah, I can still do that. Or I can learn this thing that previously I was like, nah, that seems a little risky for me. So
yeah, I think that some of that's that wisdom that kicks in where you start to realize that and we've talked about this before, but let me reiterate for folks listening the first time. It's just like there's that linear progressions, which are like, what's the next hardest thing? Where is there's sort of these macro movements that are growingly difficult and stack on each other. One more rotation, one more foot on the jump, one more gradient of like difficulty moving straight up versus looking at sort of the horizon and building that wider base. We earlier on in the podcast would talk about climbing the mountain and finding a wide base at a mountaintop, right? Instead of always trying to just find what's the next little smallest rock I can get on top of, kind of thing. But the lateral progressions were things that we've had conversations with the coaches. I've been talking to coaches about them and just like really stressing that creativity and experience in a way that brings up basically using the same technique that you've been working on already, but just in a contextual shift. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about, and I'll credit Olaf for after that conversation, we talked a lot about how to understand lateral progressions and how to implement them and how to create examples of them. But then he talked about maybe using diagonal progressions, which I like that terminology, just to introduce like a varying complexity where the movement still may be the same, but now the target is different and it's more difficult, but you're not actually changing the whole technique or going a full gradient up on the skill level difficulty. You're sort of adding in a variable that makes it more difficult, but it's still the same technique you just worked on. So I like that idea, and sort of playing in that space of, well, let's go up a notch and then let's explore sort of the periphery of that movement or that skill and where can I use it. So if we're talking about like a step vault, instead of going from step vault straight to Kong vault, you might work on step vault on a very simple feature, but then you might work on a lateral progression, which could be something like, okay, well, I'm going to do step vault now, but I'm going to do it in a safer situation using maybe a more narrow object, like a beam instead of the box, right? I'm not really changing it that much. Same technique, a little more risk, so you include it there. But then maybe something like, okay, well now step vault pre would be diagonal because now you're combining like a precision landing with... It
is a harder skill. But,
right, but you're not going Kong pre. So that's why I think exploring that periphery and broadening the horizon of skills is something that comes with wisdom. Like you get smart enough where you like learn enough where you can be like, oh, I can do this and that. But if you're somebody who's brand new, it's just a flood of information. Or if you're a very narrow-minded coach or young coach, you're just going to be like, oh, well, you do step vault or you do pop step vault and then you do step and then you do speed and then you do Kong and then you do, you're running straight up the gambit of growingly difficult techniques that you've seen before with no use of it. It's a bit analogous to language where people just go to some schools and other, like I remember when I went to school in China, people knew a lot of English. They memorized a ton of nouns, but they could not form grammar and sentence and have conversation. Whereas people here who are new to the country, new to the language, don't have a huge vocabulary, but relative to the subject matter, let's say it's a restaurant, a shop, a vocation, right? They can work in that space, all kinds of inside and out with just 50 words, right?
Yep. So it's, in a similar language vein, I was always taught, especially with the French language, that it's ignore the nouns, focus on the verbs. If you understand how the verbs work, you're much more flexible in the language, right? That's very, very true with French. I'm not sure, like Japanese, you don't even conjugate your verbs, right? Or to a certain degree, it's just the verb is the verb. So maybe it doesn't apply to all languages. But in this case, I feel parkour is very much the same, right? Like the verbs are these lateral and diagonal progressions, right? And you learn the noun that is step vault, right? And then all of the things that you can do with the step vault and where you can do it and what you can add to it, those are all like your verbs. I mean, in English, that's adjectives and adverbs technically, right? But in our analogy, to keep it simple, right? Like all of that stuff are like all the verbs. And so you may be like table. You can push the table, pull the table, flip
breakfast,
the table,
lunch,
jump
dinner.
on the table. Yeah, right? And so you have so much more flexibility. And I think all of that periphery is what I would call style, right? We typically, like in the parkour world, to call style like free running, and we call it tricking, and we call it, the more acrobatic, like stylistic stuff that people associate with these highlight clips that they see on Instagram, right? But really, style is just all the periphery stuff that you would do with a move.
So
right?
style can be like the aesthetic, and I think that's normally when people are like, "Oh, you did this for the way it looks," or
which is
flip or whatever.
Which is, let's be honest, like 99% of parkour.
Right. Even if it is skill, if roof gap is technically it's skill, but it is aesthetic because you're filming it, and it's the way it looks.
Which
right?
no
Like
shame,
you just jump
no
across
shame.
the cracks
We
in
love
the
that.
sidewalk and post that.
Yeah. Like see, 10,
Same
11
distance.
feet in my broad jump, but it's on like grass, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So then there's the style that is a description of a person and their preferences and how they apply it and what they look like when they do it. Like there's the finesse, there's the choices, there's the character. I think that's a broader definition, probably a better definition too that could be used. So I think I've heard you more recently, Jesse, talk about like, if I ask like, hey, are we gonna do a style clip or something like that? And I feel a bit pigeonholed.
Raven hold?
Oh,
Yeah.
crow hold.
Crowed into.
Oh, there we go.
Doing like having to say that sometimes I feel like if I'm not doing enough sort of like dry skill work or speed work or something like that to say I'm now a style guy, right? Like I feel like sometimes forced into that definition at times. Like, oh, I really like people will be like, hey, if you're not keeping up to what people are doing in skill, or you're doing things that seem, let's say, less objective, now you're a style person and you're somehow less of a parkour person in many ways. Like I really do feel like there's a judgment in the sphere of parkour that tends to be present. It doesn't really change my opinions much, but I just sense it, right?
Huh.
But what you've said recently, when I asked you, like, hey, so we're gonna do a montage episode, what you want to do some style stuff, or you want to do and I don't even think I had to finish the sentence, but if you're like, it's all style, bro, and I was like, yes, it is. Like, and that just hit me right. It's kind of haiku, right?
Yeah.
So
We can make it.
right? What's that? Yeah.
I'm trying to count syllables there. Not quite, but okay.
Oh no, not haiku. I'm sorry.
It's pretty close though.
Koan, gongan, like
Oh,
moment of
yeah.
zen. Yeah, koan. Right. There's
Yeah.
a koan. So like those things that sort of are almost like I refer to koans as like spiritual humor. It's like a joke. I can't make you laugh. I also, if I'm like a wise master, I can't make you enlightened, but I may present a concept or an idea or say something at the right time that person's like, oh,
Yeah.
I got it. So it's basically spiritual humor, right?
Yeah.
So it's got to land right. And so in that moment for me, I had some enlightenment where I was like, it's true. Just like let it go. You know what I mean? Like let go of the idea that stuff ever isn't style.
I like to think of it as like as levels in a video game, if we're going to bring it to video games here, right? And like at level 1, you may be able to run around the beginner area and slay all sorts of monsters and grind and make little campfires if you're playing RuneScape, level up your fire making ability, right? But the real fun is always as you get higher and higher, right? So the desire, or even like the push to pursuing a higher skill level in parkour shouldn't be that you're just trying to get to the next level because you think that's what it is, but it's because it opens up so many more raids that you can go on, right? Like if everybody's like, "Oh, dude,"
he said raids.
I thought you said grades, like gradient, but raids.
No,
raids
would
yeah,
have
raids,
maybe
yeah.
been a better word, but
No,
my point is like, right? Like if everybody's like, "Hey, we're gonna go out and train," you shouldn't feel obligated to have to keep up with everybody that you train with. We've talked about that, but you should feel or should want to be able to connect at a similar level, right? You should want to be able to, like, when you go out and train with other people, to be like, I'll be able to do a large percentage of what they're going to be doing, because that's the whole goal, is to go out and be social. And we're being social, through movement, right? In order to do that, you have to be a certain level. You can't go on a certain raid if you're not level 80, right? You just can't get in the door. And so sometimes you need to pursue that higher skill level so that you can get in the door. And if you want to do a different role on the raid rather than like what everybody else is doing, then hey, go for it, right? But you do at least want to get in the door. Now, obviously, at some point, you won't be able to get there because maybe that skill gap's just too high or requires too much effort, or maybe you're injured, or maybe you just genuinely don't.
Baseline's in a different place.
Or you just genuinely don't have a desire to do that, which is
right.
totally fine, right? Because maybe the people that you're training with are elite pro level athletes and you just happen to be like the just regular parkour guy, in which case you're like, that's not what I want to be. Totally fine. But there should still be some like, I want to up my skill baseline so that I can keep up with other people, or at least I can explore a larger stylistic side.
Yeah, and can you participate, right? That's a big thing for me, and I continuously just more cognizant and like appreciative of just being able to still play the game, right? To be around people who are moving and still be a contributor to that chemistry, right? That's what matters the most to me. It's just, what is it like? I still have just like honed my sort of like social efforts or my personality efforts down to most recently this year, as after my like, what am I like? I'm like almost 5 months into daily meditation. So there has been a lot of like retrospect, a lot of insight. And I've just pretty much come down to, there's like what it's like to be you, and there's what it's like to be around you. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like there's the experience of being me, and then there's the experience for you all and me when we're around each other. That's it. That's it. If you're asleep, there's something that's like to be asleep. Maybe you remember it, maybe you're not. When you wake up, you're alone or you're with other people, and there's something that's like to be around them. And those are the things you should work on. Those are the most important things, because that's reality. That's what's really happening. Everything else is imagined, right?
That's style.
That's style. That's your style, right? So yeah, just, you know, just trying to be shiny. So shiny.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think in summary, we're saying style, or pursuing your training style, is maybe the best way to find happiness in your practice, and just to be able to continue doing it whether you're feeling 100%, 80%, or 1%, right? Because you can always find something stylistically that's at your level, but not to ignore the baseline skills. That doesn't mean that you can like learn a step vault and then be like, that's it. Right. I've peaked in parkour. Yeah. I'll never need to do anything else because I'll just be the infinite style step vault master. Right. Which could be kind of cool, but it feels a little one-dimensional. Right. Right. So it's like you level up to a different skill level, and then you spend your time getting XP by pursuing all these lateral, maybe a little bit of diagonal skills, and then you feel like you've got enough XP to go to that next rank, and then you do the same thing, right? And that's until you get to the point where you're like, I'm happy with my training. I'm happy with where my strength and skill levels are. I don't seek to go beyond that. And then you just get to explore the entire tree from top to bottom and all that's stylistically represented under that skill.
Yeah, what you just described is enlightenment.
Yes, I did it.
I did it. Ah! There's so many stories in like in Chinese culture anyway, where you'll have like Buddhist masters or other, Taoist masters or whatnot who pursue enlightenment, and it's always this story of going through an institution or having a relationship with the self that's very challenging and fraught, and then eventually getting to the point where you release that and you no longer need it. And Western stories use this too with different archetypes, like hero archetypes, or the reluctant hero, the hero's journey, those type of narratives. And so much of this is just like crafting a narrative. Like so much of this is internal work, right? Like you've got to craft a narrative where you're happy with yourself no matter what and what you're doing first, and then you can get to a point where it's like, oh, now I have this freedom to explore because I've crafted a narrative that I'm comfortable with. And then hopefully eventually you don't need that narrative at all. You're just like doing, right? Yeah. And that's what you want to get to. I think one variable I want to call out in here is there's time in this matters so much. It's like there's ambition, and I will tell you the most ambitious, like sort of the people who sold me the most on what they were going to achieve and accomplish just throughout my 15 years of fitness has been prospects, right? These are people who actually never got in and did the thing that they advertised they were going to do with such enthusiasm. And early on in my sales career, I talked to these people and I felt like, oh, this is the person. This person's going. They have all these. They'll talk to me for like 2.5 hours about how sold they are on whatever it is they're working on. Whether that early on was like weight loss, or later on was like kung fu martial arts, and then came into parkour. And I was just so sure if I had anybody as a customer, as a student, that this was the one, right? Maybe they're athletic or whatever, blah blah blah, or they seem like they're in it. And those are just the people that maybe they sign up, maybe they don't. Like the number of people like that who just don't even sign up were really high. And the number of people who signed up and then never showed up on day one. Just, it's almost to the point where like now when someone's super enthused and they come in and they're new, I'm like, cool, sounds good. But I'm not, my heart's been broken too many times, right? You're not, like, just show me 6 months, show me a year. And then I know that now we got to look at Colin. Like he was one of the quietest guys coming in. And I always joke, he's a great coach, but I always joke about when he got hired as a coach, we didn't hire Colin. Colin just showed up like some guy on like The Office, right? So I had done like a thing where I was like trying to pick people with like more like outgoing personalities out of the adult class to work in summer camps. And I was like, hey, you guys come in for that, and you guys come in for that, and you come in for that. Okay, cool. And then Colin talked to the front desk. Right. He talked to Emily at the front desk. She's like, you just need to go in and show up. Just say I'm doing it. And then I showed up and I was literally like confronted him like, Colin, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm doing this. And I was like, okay, cute. So
nice. It's like the inverse of the Office show where they're like, he was actually fired years ago, but through a glitch in the system, he still gets to clock in. Right. It's like Colin was like, he was actually hired years ago, but nobody actually hired him.
Right. So it was sort of a funny thing. And so, but the exercises like that, another experience with hiring, hundreds of people and dismissing, a percentage of them, is just that time is such a good indicator. It's like, you can't just like, all right, let's just take this slow. It's like, I think dating should be like that too, where it's like, let's only fools rush in, right? So let's give this a little bit, and if it's meant to be, brevet style, the cream's gonna rise to the top. And you need to know that about yourself too, because sometimes I get so excited about stuff, I'll be like, oh my gosh, and I can't even talk like the design of the studio or something.
Like locker doors.
Locker doors, right? For you? I've thought about lockers for a while. So, so then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it. I know I'm gonna do it. And then like 2 weeks in, I'll be like, oh shoot, I haven't touched that at all, right? So know that about yourself too, that just sometimes there's just time to be put in, and that consistency matters. And maybe you're not the most consistent person. Maybe you rotate. You got to learn that about yourself. Where is consistency in your life? Where is it? Is it in phases? Is it straight through? Because some people are so crazy, those pick up a thing and they just never let it down. But other people kind of have a more rotational thing. I'm a little bit more like that. And it compounds over time. Like, I can only stay interested in something for about 2 months. And then I have to change the subject.
Oh, that's a pretty narrow window.
It is about 2 months. So but I learned that about myself, and I just vary the cycles. So it's more like periodization and training than it is like giving something up. It's like, okay, I can spend about 2 months on this. I'm gonna put it down. This is important to me. I have like, 3 to 5 things that are important to me to work on, and then I just rotate-ish through them, whatever it's like I never do them, right? Yeah. There's some ritual there, but like deep dive, yeah, it's about that for me. About a 2 month cycle of deep dive.
Interesting.
So, do you guys have that? Do you?
I feel like I could grind on something for a very long time.
See, yeah.
No, yeah, I rotate quite a bit.
What do you rotate with? Because you've been playing Apex since like season 1.
Ooh, it's very true.
I will tell you the launch of Cyberpunk that night was the last time I played video games.
I know, yeah. I tried to play with him the other day. It took him like 5 hours.
Because I had to download every update for the last 6 months. And I'm like, oh, wait, there's an upgrade. There's an upgrade. There's an upgrade. Sorry.
Yeah.
Window lapsed.
But yeah, I feel like... I feel like a lot of parkour people, to wrap my like opinions about it up, I feel like a lot of like true, like the pure parkour kids are intimidated by style. Because, and you see this with B-Boy too, I don't feel like anyone wants to do dance because it's like, it feels impossible to have that much swagger, right? You look at someone and you're just like, you move every single muscle of your body so intentionally. There's no way I'm going to get to that point. Right now, I can't even jump from point A to point B, like 6 inches further than I want to. And I feel like it's so easy to get intimidated by style, because it's more than just power. It is experience and
ability. Yeah,
there's a intelligence with moving that is quite like, it feels ethereal. But everyone has style. Almost everyone you train with personally, you could put them as a silhouette and see them moving against the background and pick out who that person is without seeing their face. Everyone has a distinct way of moving, and if you just put more points into what that looks like, not necessarily how difficult your moves are, but just being more unique in the way that you move and the silhouette of your movement, that's all you got to do to start off with.
Right.
It's not going to get you to b-boy or hip-hop levels, but at least getting your foot in the door and starting to define the way that you move as more unique.
You can really get inspired by that process of discovery, and you just have to own it. And sometimes you a duck is a duck, or like if you look at my silhouette.
Yep. Oh yeah. You're gonna say it's arms, bro.
You're gonna be like, what is that bird? That's a big bird. Is that prehistoric? Right. So just learn that about yourself, and then find the ways to put the sparkle, right? Use that word. Put the sparkle on it, and that's self-discovery, and it's such a cool journey. Mm-hmm. But it's very hard to see that when I love what you said earlier, because you said that about B-Boy, but that's what my adult students say to me nonstop. They're like, yeah, you say that, but I look at you guys, and you're just like, jump over there on that thing and that thing. It's just like effortless. How do I see myself there? And that pointing a finger at the moon, right? Right? So it's difficult. But you had the answer right there. You have a style. You gotta learn you. Which is why I like what Jesse said earlier about if you take 3 shots of yourself, like 3 video clips, and then maybe you need to bring your expectations down if it's not what you like. There's an element of like how in touch you are with what it is to be around you or see you, right? Because there's what's happening in your head when you do the move, and that experience is totally different than a spectator who looks at you, right? So you need to be in touch. You need to have an understanding of what it's like to see you and be honest with that. And I think most people are so like have that. I don't think they've never looked. It's a closet they won't open, or they're just in denial, or they have looked and they have so much judgment against it that they aren't owning up and being honest with just who they are and how they can improve. That's very like record yourself, look at yourself, own up to it. If it bothers you, work on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and that's like style, right? It's like, here's what you're doing and here's what it looks like, or what you expect that you're doing and what it actually looks like. And style is the pursuit of bringing those together, right? Style is that, like, when I dance or when I do this, in my head it looks like this, and on camera it looks like this. They're very close,
it's
right?
The effect.
That's style. right?
And that's why it's always very hard to compare yourself to someone and try to match someone else's style.
Yep.
But you can mimic them. I think it's very practical to mimic them and then be like, all right, I'm taking 10% of that.
Yeah. You copy them up to 80%, and then the last 20 you just let it be. You're just like, whatever. That Travis's arms that are like 6 feet longer than mine will ever be. So how he does that, I don't know how. Okay, but like I
just push harder and they get longer.
But right, like so you just get to 80% of like copying something, and then they're not actually 6 feet longer. I hope everyone knew I was being facetious.
Longer? They're 6 feet. They're not 6 feet.
They're like 6'1", aren't they? They're like 6'1" or something like that. Is your reach?
Yeah, 6'3", I think. And I'm 5'11".
Boy, got some long arms.
Dude, making my arms look big is so hard. I'll be in the gym like for 6 months.
Dude, yeah, you just gotta be doing like Scott curls. You gotta get them like the bicep blaster or whatever.
Bicep
the
blaster.
little curve thing that you do your curls with.
It's like
so you can't
if
cheat.
my humerus was half as long, I'd look like who had the really. Yeah, I just feel like I've had some students that have shorter humerus and they're like just always look like Popeye.
No. Short femur squad. Yeah.
No. Yeah, them beams. The femur and humerus.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope everybody kind of got some cool tips about like training style or sustainability around your practice. And certainly, as always, the most important thing, Cullen's measuring his femurs right now. Certainly the most important thing about any of your practice is that you are happy. And that you're enjoying it. And that obviously comes from a certain bit of maturity, but in our humble opinion, that comes from stylistically representing yourself as best you can through your movement. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty cool thing to have. So if you are listening to us, you can check us out, watch us on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for tuning in and seeing our pretty faces. You can also listen to us on the go on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thanks.
That's right.
We'll catch you next time.